Yeah. You're listening to Autodesk's Digital Builder Podcast, a show that inspires construction professionals to innovate and use technology to improve how they build our world. I'm Eric Thomas, and I've been working in construction for nearly a decade. And now I have the privilege to sit down with industry trailblazers to hear how they're solving construction's biggest challenges and redefining the future of the built environment. Welcome to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we are here to talk all about the state of industrialized construction at a global scale, not just North America. And so I'm really excited to dive in and hear a bit more about what's happening across the world within this very exciting and progressive concept. It really brings manufacturing techniques to the AEC industry. It allows us to improve efficiency. We help build at scale, reduce costs, improve safety, quality, all kinds of things that you've likely heard in some capacity before. And many folks at Autodesk talk about the convergence of manufacturing and construction. To help tell this story, I'm joined by Tarika Jain, the co-founder and head of business at nCircle Tech, and Ben Cochran, the vice president of Developer Enablement here at Autodesk. I'm excited to get into this one. It's going to be a fun conversation, and you both bring very impactful and differing perspective to the conversation around IC. And so I think it'd be impactful to just hear a bit more about your roles and how it does connect to industrialized construction. Tarika, can you kick us off with that one?
As you said, I'm Tarika, one of the co-founders at nCircle Tech. We create bespoke software solutions for construction industry. And I have been in this industry for almost 12 years now. So as far as industrialized construction goes, I want to take it back to my previous role before I started nCircle Tech and diving into construction technology. I worked with one of the largest Japanese car manufacturer. And there I learned a lot of concepts, principles like lean manufacturing, just-in-time, and Kaizen. And I see, big correlation between Japanese way of car production and industrialized construction. Both results into very similar things like reduction in cost, increasing efficiency and quality, at the same time bringing sustainability. So, I see both the industries are innovating at the same time. But during these last 10 years, I've seen that industrialized construction have brought very new things. I've been to Detroit and I saw exchange towers that are built on lift builder technology. I was in a conference last year in the UK where I was introduced with the concept of mobile micro factories. So I see a lot of new things coming in industrialized construction, and I'm very excited to talk about it during this conversation.
You've got a robust background in the industry, so I'm excited to hear a bit more of your perspective today. So Ben, in contrast to that, where do you sit in the IC ecosystem? I'd be interested to hear a bit more.
Yeah, so working for Autodesk, I'm looking after developer enablement. One of the things I build out are the APIs and the systems that we use to converge across industries. So some of the core problems that industrialized construction have to overcome is the exchange of data and information and collaboration between people who are working from different industries and need to bring information from a manufacturing process into the construction process. And this is where there are so many devices and so many opportunities and so many narrow areas that are being explored that will eventually be generalized and democratized. But right now, it's just a rich opportunity for developers to expand and move into this fast-moving and changing opportunity. And that's where we build APIs and are trying to build an ecosystem of developers who can collaborate between the industries and realize the industrialized construction opportunity.
It's such an interesting moment in the realm of construction or manufacturing. But if I just speak, directly about construction right now, we didn't have this breadth of tools 10 or 15 years ago. And it's such a unique moment right now where this whole ecosystem is critical in moving our industry forward and continuing to manage all of the ongoing challenges we have. But as you very astutely pointed out, there's data that lives in a million different places. There's a lot of progress that needs to happen to interlink all of this. And if you're so siloed, it's challenging, especially as folks are starting to bring new tools in. And so it's so encouraging to hear that you're so focused on just democratizing that access to the information and making sure things connect in the way that don't involve, copying and pasting from a spreadsheet into another thing and then manually rolling it over, because we all know how many errors are introduced in that painful environment. But that kind of leads into my first question for you, Ben. I was hoping you could kick us off and just walk me through the state of the world with industrialized construction right now. I think you alluded to it at a high level a moment ago, but the concept's not new, but where is the state of things today?
Yeah, so the state of things is different across the world. And so I sort of break the world in my mind into Europe, there's North America, and then there's the rest of the developing world. And as you call out, it's a changing environment, and there need to be some key factors in place for people to change the way they work. If something is 1% better, 2% better, 3% better, the risk oftentimes of changing the way you work is too high. But if the opportunity is large, if you start getting to 20, 30, 40, 50% improvements in productivity, now all of a sudden that changes. And if you look at Europe, where labor costs are higher, they've already stepped into the industrialized construction opportunity. They've looked at and seen, how can we do things better and more efficiently and effectively? And when they do that, to your point, you called out spreadsheets and copying data between things. And this is literally how it works. You talk to large scale factory manufacturers or factory builders, and they talk about this. They talk about these meetings where they come to the meeting with their spreadsheets, and they put their in my mind it's always in paper, but no, it's on a screen somewhere, and they're all sitting around the conference room and they're all talking about some element in this Excel document, and they spend weeks trying to understand the data from the different representatives, people who need to bring some piece of equipment into the factory, people who need some sort of yields, and then you have the builders, and then you have the fire suppression systems, and you have all these problems that are in place, and they're all trying to understand each other's data and information. And then eventually, after they understand all of this, they get to make a decision, and then they get to move forward. And this process, if it takes 2 weeks to understand everything, and then you get to make a decision, you've moved the efficiency problem from one place to another. And this is where understanding the information, understanding the data, bringing that to the conversation so that you can make a decision faster. And so you understand that context of something. And this happens because everyone, the number of collaborators you're working with has increased because the complexity is also increased. And so you look at every single person along the way who's an expert in their area, talking to someone else who's not an expert in their area because they're an expert in some other area. It's how do they all come together? And this means there's so many opportunities that can now be solved with oftentimes with software and processes. But that requires, again, that change, and that motivation to change means I need to make as a someone doing this and investing in industrial construction, I need 20, 30% improvement on my productivity.
Your point about risk resonates so strongly with me in the broader context of your answer there, because construction profit margins aren't huge. There's a lot of uncontrollable factors in our industry that they have to manage. And I think most construction companies in some senses are also risk management companies. It's a big factor in how they make all of their choices. And I think you're absolutely right to get folks to be eager to embrace the level of change that we're often suggesting. The improvements do need to be dramatic. And I see it there. It is, but it does take some work to build that out. And I think, Tarika's company is doing a lot of the effort to make that risk management a lot more palatable for the companies. And so I'd love to hear your take on that as far as the state of things in alignment with what Ben has said.
Yeah, so when Ben was saying all this, I could really feel it because, I have seen both industries earlier in my earlier life, like car manufacturing and now construction industry. I could really feel, howsoever we try and we are speaking here about the, latest things in industrialized construction. I see a lot of things happening. We do a lot of things and make changes. But, we still need to adapt it. And make it happen. So I really correlate. I've seen those factories. I've seen, people dwindling with data, people dwindling with, old way of doing things. So yeah, I mean, you're so true. So bang on.
It's easy for me to sit here and opine about how we need to embrace more industrialized construction because, I'm sitting at my desk in my house in Oregon right now. I'm not out actually having to connect the dots in the way that Ben was talking about a minute ago. But I think the value is there and the tools are there now, as I mentioned a minute ago. The technology is starting to be developed in a way that just didn't exist. And so, Tarika, my next question really, I'd like to shift our focus to those tools and technology that are in place in order to actually manage industrialized construction. So can you tell me more about the tools you're seeing and how they can improve those connection points between design, manufacturing, and construction? Because this way of building is very different from the more traditional ways of approaching, whether it's stick-built residential or, you're pouring concrete or whatever. So I'd be interested to see what, your teams are using and how you deploy this.
So definitely it is much more different than a typical construction. So there is a lot of reliance on tools and technology. Basic to start with, very base design and coordination tools to make the design well for building. Then advanced tools for additive manufacturing, robotics to help in speeding up and bringing efficiency in manufacturing sites. We also see tools, data acquisition tools getting used like laser scanning and RFIDs. I see adoption of 4D scheduling tools and project management, data management tools, where you can map out the flow of workflow, entire workflows, and all the stakeholders are there on those platforms. Then beyond that, I see extended reality solutions and wearable technology solutions. Where we come in for our customers at times are they or everyone who's in industrialized construction is doing little differently. It's not something which is very set and defined. So they come to us to create technology platforms that suit their need, which has more interoperability among the tools, different set of tools that stakeholders are using. So we create such platforms for them, custom bespoke platforms for them, and we create configurators and plugins for them to suit the needs of modernization along with standardization.
Ben, are you seeing anything interesting from your side that Tarika didn't cover? I know, Autodesk obviously supports this ecosystem in a very robust way. I'd be curious your take too.
Yeah, what's interesting and surprising to me is I remember I was, I think a couple of years ago, I was in Europe and I was talking to some of our partners, and I was surprised when they come in and they say, so what do you do? And then we manufacture walls. And coming from America, out of the US, I'm like, you manufacture walls. So how does that work, right? And we've all seen buildings that were put together with like puzzle pieces or Lego pieces. But for the entire business to be surrounded, around that, you have a manufacturing part as significant as the size of the building, and it all scales at residential scale, at commercial scale, at factory scale. It changes the perspective, right? And I think that's what's really interesting, and I get really excited about it because anytime you have a business where you have the factors of change are happening and you're seeing them play out in one area of the world and it's not yet ubiquitous around the world, this is where you talk about, the US and North America is further behind, and then the rest, developing places are further behind because of the cost of labor and how things are built. It means that this is a huge wave of change, and this is a huge wave of opportunity for our. This is where I get excited about developers and building businesses and developing ecosystems and things. And this is where I see there's just a huge opportunity for businesses to invest in this space and to see that return with a long, long wave, right? So we're in the initial piece, we're seeing it happen, and we're seeing the real return on investment. And we know that wave is going to build and build and build as it rolls out through the rest of the world. So that's the element to me that I just get really, I get giddy about that opportunity to do things better, more efficiently. It's in Autodesk vision, right? It's to help people make a better world. It's, when you do things in this way, you reduce waste, You build things more effectively. You're able to understand the unintended consequences of your designs better because you can model them. What you're actually building is closer to what you actually model in the design tool. The intent of design gets built out. We do start to realize some of those opportunities. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I think our European friends are most certainly a bit ahead of us in this conversation as far as embracing the focus for prefabricated construction in general, IC methodologies. And it's interesting because the perception of industrialized construction and prefab was not very positive in the US for a long time. Everybody's like, oh, it's just an ugly square box that looks the same and the quality's not great and everything. And I feel like we've turned that narrative upside down to some degree in the US. There's just a lot of work to do to continue moving that perception forward. But it's not what it was 10 years ago. And I really encourage folks to step back and go, okay, look what we can achieve. How can we streamline? Where are the opportunities to improve safety and that predictability that you were talking about? But then your answer actually leads really nicely into my next question. And it's tied to, where are you still seeing some of those big gaps? And I think gap could also be, code for opportunity in the grand scheme of how you think about this industry and where these challenges lie. And I think this can sit with technology, collaboration methods, building methodologies. Like, where are those gaps or opportunities that you're seeing right now?
You're exactly right there. And in people's minds, they think about the double wide homes they see on the highway or the container style, buildings that are put together. But we're seeing far more opportunities. We're seeing, pre-cut timbers. We're seeing, pre-cut conduit and pre-molded. It's sort of like the one thing is you can imagine a building that's built inside of another building and then shipped somewhere, and the other one is the parts to make a building, not the raw materials being delivered on site and those parts being configured and put together. The opportunity is everywhere, right? It's. I was surprised. I talked to a window manufacturer a couple months ago, and I got to learn more and more about how they were optimizing their process. So instead of looking at it from the construction side, I was so interested about this is that they go and they build for larger buildings, corporate buildings. They build the curtain walls and the facades, the glass. And the problem that, in that space is that when you're building the building, all of the interface points for the windows move around. And so, as the building's being built, so, you can't, model them and then know that it moved, X number of inches. And as a result, they need to go back and remeasure. And so that changes their manufacturing process because now their process needs to be able to understand how to accommodate the changes in the building as it's being built. So, again, huge opportunities, and they see speeding up their change time as a huge opportunity for them to make manufacturing closer to the delivery of and the quality of the windows that they deliver. That's it. It's just so again, it's you look at these things and you see when you start to actually follow the workflow, you start to see all these opportunities, and you start to your mind starts to wonder, and you say, okay, so how do you even measure where those interface points are? You have to send someone out and do it. Can you do it with photogrammetry? Can you do it with a laser scanner? And they're like, no, you have to actually, they're like, we get better quality by having someone walk out and actually measure where they are. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. It's as we look to build tools and automations, there's things we find all the time that are very easy to automate with robotics and more advanced tools. Again, laser scans, these things, and there are some things that no, it doesn't work yet. We send someone out to do it, and just understanding what the best practices are right now is really where everyone's at. Especially in the U.S., where they're trying to get a grasp on what's the opportunity. So you're exactly right. I love the fact that there's so many rich opportunities for businesses to be developed in this space.
And you make a great point too, like having that person that needs to go out and measure physically because they've learned that the default tools that we might assume give them the data they need aren't sufficient to deliver the quality expectations that they have for their customers. And that's so important to know because if you're not that deep in the weeds as a GC or a technology provider, you can easily make some assumptions that make folks' lives far more complex because you've introduced a process that doesn't actually work in the field. And so you have to have that feedback loop. And I think the core of what you're saying, even though you didn't say the word in your answer, really comes down to data. It's a data conversation, access to information and visibility at the right moment and in the way that you need it to make those choices or improve your processes to ensure just-in-time delivery or a change order makes its way through where you go, well, that window doesn't fit there anymore because it needs to be 2 feet narrower because this part of the building envelope changed. And you go, okay, well, how do we speed this up? And those are those answers that those really impact change either for a very specific manufacturer, like a window manufacturer, or the contractor or the owners. You think about healthcare or some of our very intense life science applications for construction. The speed to market is tremendous there, and the impact of schedule delays is also huge because we need those facilities to continue moving, our entire society forward. I'm going to stop now because I can opine in a very enthusiastic way on this one for the next half an hour. But Tarika, I'm curious, the core focus on data there and getting people the information they need. Any thoughts there on where those gaps or opportunities sit from you?
Yeah, Ben's answer reminds me of Giant Causeway. I was there a few weeks back, and all those hexagonal stones that are there, it feels like someone has, put industrialized construction onto it, and they're lying on top of each other, exactly symmetrical, as exact as we can think of. But jokes apart. I feel, yes, definitely industrialized construction, actual job sites, they are not running into an control environment like we see in car manufacturing or other industries. And there are, there are definitely tolerances and gap in tolerances. What we design and what comes out, actual job site, even the foundation of the building have higher tolerances. So imagine something which is designed is not coming out on the actual job site. So I see we need to create technology and workflows which facilitate these design changes and rapid manufacturing according to the job sites, and do it very frequently. Maybe by going there, maybe by laser scanning, by RFIDs or whatever we can think of. But they are not in controlled environment, and that's a very big gap. Data interoperability definitely is a challenge, one of the biggest challenges. Other than that, I could think of I just talked about the key principles of this manufacturing style as just in time. We try to follow the principle in car manufacturing as well as in industrialized construction. But the problem definitely is we don't want to order so much that it lies at the job site. At the same time, we can't afford to have delays. Then everything, all the stakeholders, everybody's money get stuck, and it results into huge losses. So I see big gaps in supply chain and material delays, and coordination, among all different stakeholders.
Yeah, the just-in-time delivery nuance is so important to consider too. I mean, think about building in, say, downtown San Francisco or somewhere where we're in a confined space to begin with. The projects just don't have space to store a mountain of materials if it shows up, 2 weeks early. And then in contrast to that, all of their building permits are so specific oftentimes. The window for shutting down a space to get the materials into that is so narrow too. You can't be 2 weeks late. Otherwise, the entire project ends up getting delayed because you've got to figure out how to get that new permit to open it up to get something in if it's too big for a normal street. There's so many nuances and constraints on those that are out there doing the building. It's a challenge. I mean, the labor shortage is ongoing, the ongoing climate with material shortages outside of just thinking about delivery times. It's a layered beast. And so I think anything we can do with the tools implemented from industrialized construction to improve that certainty and that confidence, once folks start feeling comfortable and confident in those processes, it's going to be a huge win. But there is work to get there. I'm thankful that Tarika, your company's out there helping support that, and Ben, you've got a team focused on just interconnecting that. And Ben, I'm curious, what do you think needs to happen at this point to fill those gaps? Like, we've identified those opportunities and we've poked our finger in some of those challenges that we're having here. Like, what can people do, whether they're at a software provider or a construction company or somebody who's just enthusiastic about this, to start enacting some of this change? Like, what do we got to do to build that foundation?
Yeah. So what we're doing in Autodesk is you mentioned earlier is data. We're providing data, and we want to open up our data models. So in the design space, data models have been, I would say, they're open if you're inside of the design application. So if you're inside of Revit or Inventor or Fusion, you can get access to the data. But that's not where people need this information. And when we serialize to these file formats, we end up putting the data really hidden behind perpetual file format that it doesn't get people what they need. What we're trying to do now, what we're moving towards, is an open data model. And this open data model is a cloud-connected data model that enables developers to bridge the gap. And this is where, to your question, so what can you do? In industry right now, or in an opportunity right now where change is happening so fast, but it can't happen too fast. So it's like, if we came out with a perfect solution that is the solution that we need a decade from now, people wouldn't be able to use it. It wouldn't work because, to your point, at some point you have to get the permit to be able to move the equipment from one side of town to the other, or you have to be able to work with the concrete delivering, the concrete trucks and make sure they're delivered on time, right? You can't let concrete sit for too long in a truck, otherwise you run into another problem. You can't go too far into the future, and you don't want to be behind. And this means it's an opportunity really for smaller companies and smaller investments to go and start now. And I think that's where, again, it's taking that data and understanding what the developers need, what the building developers need today, and what that opportunity is, and connecting that to the people who are creating the pre-manufactured parts. If they're pre-cut timbers, okay, that's what we're doing now, and that's the opportunity. But soon, that pre-cut timbers is going to turn into walls or ceilings, and then it's going to move into other larger components, and then there are going to be components that need to be reconfigured, and it's going to be pre-configured balconies, and all kinds of opportunities. But the key is that it's going to be moving quickly, and it's not going to be moving when things move quickly in technology. They don't always move at the same pace, and this is why it's so challenging. I think is that in some projects, they're going to move faster because of that state, that city, that project, that developer. And in some places, they're going to move slower. And that's where it's really an opportunity for investment. From an Autodesk point of view, we want to encourage that ecosystem of developers. But then we also want to, as things become standard, we want to democratize that and provide that for everyone and lift all ships. Our back of the room agenda is move it faster than we can move in as a democratized technology by creating, as it was said, bespoke solutions that are needed for a given project.
Yeah, and it's so key to understanding exactly what people are trying to achieve and trying to do as well. Like your point about folks aren't necessarily in Revit or Inventor deciding what information they need to make their decisions. I think that's incredibly astute. And I think early on, had a lot of dashboarding that was put together that also was not necessarily particularly actionable for folks. And those were early iterations, 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, we're starting to get the data in one spot and able to access it. And now we're really iterating in the things that we're creating. And my assumption would be Tarika's team is doing a lot of this, where you really say, what do you need? What do you want? And then you find and centralize it so they have the right information to make the right decisions at the right time, instead of doing, gut feel or using outdated info that they don't trust. I mean, I remember the early dashboards too. Folks were putting bad data into these things, and clean data is incredibly important. And the first time you burn a superintendent who made a decision out of a dashboard that wasn't correct, it's a lot of work to get them to go the second time and say, I promise it's okay this time. And so, building this tool with intent right now is so important. And there's just so much opportunity. And Tarika, I'm really curious to hear, amidst all this technology and cross-industry collaboration with industrialized construction, so much data, as we've alluded to. So how are your most successful clients really managing that data in your experience? And I'm also really curious to see what's impactful for those folks that are actually out there executing and doing this work, both out in the field on a project site or the folks that are working on the factory floor. Like, how are you connecting things in a way that those folks feel empowered with the information that you're giving them access to?
Yeah, I mean, good you asked this question. A lot of data gets generated in this entire process, and and that's very valuable data, and which can really be consumed nicely to bring better results. So some most important and heavy data that gets generated are the schedules and tolerances, job site tolerances. A typical manufacturing facility can serve up to 5 to 10 different job sites. in its industrialized construction. So imagine planning the production pipeline of that manufacturing facility, and all that planning and coordination with job sites was happening through emails, phone calls, text, and everything without any reference to the unique IDs. So, what we created for our customers, mobile applications where we can convey the job site schedules easily to support just in time. Because of space constraints and material cost, and job site engineers can communicate with this unique reference ID, and select that component with that unique ID in a 3D viewer and feed that data to the manufacturing plant. So imagine it's like a pizza delivery system. You order in a pizza, and you get an update. Your pizza is getting manufactured, and then you get an update that it's getting delivered, and ta-da, it's on your job site. So all in just in time. So
I like that analogy. That's actually really great as far as just the steps that are involved. And I think this all maps back to something we kind of briefly touched on before, but the bespoke nature of construction and how that contrasts to a lot of what manufacturing does, which isn't necessarily so customized. And I think some aspects of construction, if you look at like healthcare or data centers or some of the more repeatable facilities where the expectations and the kit of parts that you're putting together have a lot more commonality from facility to facility. But I'm sure there are folks out there listening right now who go, well, every one of my projects is different. How the heck does industrialized construction or prefabrication map to the work that I'm doing? And so, Ben, I think this next question I'm gonna kick to you here. So, with all of these one-off expectations that many folks are having out there, tell me more about how we can empower the manufacturing teams to handle these bespoke requests more successfully. Like, how do we further this convergence between manufacturing and construction? Because I feel like some folks at a face value might go, those two industries don't have anything to do with each other. They're, construction's off over here and manufacturing's here. We know that that's not true, but help us kind of bridge that gap a little bit further.
Yeah, I think, you're opening up the question of if you're making one, so it's manufacturing of one, and what does that mean? Does that mean we no longer want to take a manufacturing process? And coming from a computer science background, I'll give my answer in terms of the way I approach a lot of problems that happen in the computer science space or in software engineering. Oftentimes, when we look at problems, there's an initial intent to make it and say, this is a snowflake, this is one-off, this is unique, and this is special. And people who are truly great at building software, they're able to recognize the things that are special and unique about that project or that opportunity we're trying to solve for. And they also recognize what is generalizable, what can be turned into a platform or an opportunity. And as you see technology advance, we see that all over the place. We see things where you need to advance in a very unique, bespoke way to advance beyond where we are today. But then once that happens, it happens again and again and again. And then all of a sudden you start to see the opportunities. It's sort of, you see the generalizations. And we've seen this in terms of, the evolution of all the technology we work on and we use. Early days of cell phones use a very specific type of one of a few different network types. And if you were on that network type, your phone didn't work, right? And now our phones now are much, if data is sent and transported, I can use one type of phone, you use a different type of phone, we can still share information. You could argue that, iMessage and all these other things are still a little bespoke and goofy, but they get resolved and they get generalized, and we move further and further into the future of building technology. And that's what will happen in this space, is that we'll start to see what the things are that are general. And, one way of looking at it, if I'm critical of the whole industrialized construction movement, say it actually didn't start and stop soon. It was Windows are one that I love to look at. You look at the history of Windows. It wasn't that long ago. Well, maybe it was, but I can still look and point to houses where windows were made there. Like they were framed by someone who cut the glass and put a frame together and then hung the window. And now no one would ever even think of building a window that way. They would go and they say, okay, I'm going to order a window and the window is going to be delivered. So we've been moving in this direction. We continue to move in this direction, and it'll continue to evolve. The difference is that the how fast does it move, and how fast is that opportunity. And as we continue to build more and more facilities and things that are special and unique. I was in actually yesterday. I was in Seattle, and I got to see. In downtown Seattle, Amazon has built. There's a bunch of buildings which ironically look a lot alike. And then there in the middle there are the spheres that Amazon built that is open to the public. And I got to go into those buildings. Those buildings are extremely unique in terms of the framing of the building. There's the structure that they make for the spheres, but all those elements were made. Were essentially, they were prefabricated and then assembled there. And you can't get by, you can, but it's very unique building in a very unique space for a very unique climate that they're trying to create inside of these spheres that create this biosphere opportunity where they have more of a tropical feel inside of the buildings. But yeah, most of the parts inside of there were created somewhere else and then assembled on site. So it just shows that there's it depends how far you want to go down that technology road.
You kind of hit the nail on the head that I was hoping you would with your answer here too, because it's easy to think very big picture and just go, well, it's a one-off project. How on earth does this benefit? But you're absolutely right. With the technology that we've developed and our processes with prefabrication and all of these different tools, prefab doesn't necessarily mean everything is exactly the same. We're actually able to create incredibly beautiful and interesting and unique and visually compelling spaces with this technology, even if you only did it once. And these manufacturing facilities are moving to the state where they can support those things in a way that they might not have been able to 5 or 10 years ago because it wasn't really part of the consideration. Because especially in North America, the prefab was always just, here's our boxes that we're going to put up, they're going to be standardized. And there's still tremendous value in that repeatability and the kit of parts approach. But it does touch a lot more parts of construction. I think sometimes folks might understand, and you can do some really cool stuff with it if you're being innovative and creative. And Tarika, you're nodding your head with enthusiasm. I'm happy to see that. So I'm curious to hear more about, do you have any examples of how you're helping your customers support some of these bespoke efforts, whether it's a one-off single project or more of a bespoke configuration for the technology? Tell me about how you and your team manage that and support this aspect of industrialized construction.
Yeah, I mean, I really like how Ben described. The key is to convert that bespoke models into as much standard components as possible, but allowing the customization at the same time. So Ben, Eric, do you remember Katera in 2015, 2020 era? It was very popular at that time for its offshore construction, offsite construction, although unfortunately shut down. But it made huge claims and a new revolution in industrialized construction. So that time we were their software development team, and we created generative solutions that could nest the standard components in different design variations. Meaning, the objective of those solution or of those algorithm was to maximize the usage of standard components in bespoke designs. And that minimizes the wastage, that minimizes non-standard components and help them, reduce the overall cost of manufacturing and, broad sustainability. So, those were at that time, I would say, were the challenging days to even understand and interpret what Katera was trying to do. But at the end, we were able to create wonderful solutions that they sold later.
There's a lot to build on too in that customization and the ability to have the visual, like the visibility on, okay, what's unique? How can we add more commonality between these components, even if these two buildings are different. Like there's so much nuance to it in improving how we go to market instead of brand new list of materials for every single project. And it's unfortunate that that organization kind of went by the wayside, but I don't think that that's a broader critique on the industrialized construction movement as a whole. And I hope folks can see that there's so much still there, even if this one example had a bit of a shaky end state to it as far as IC goes. And Tarika, I'm curious too, how does this change in the different geos that your organization supports? Because I know you have clients in multiple parts of the world, and so could you tell me a little bit more about what constitutes success with this approach to industrialized construction, or what might be unique in different regions?
Yeah, definitely. Every geography has its own local conditions, has its own unique challenges. So, what defines success or what is successful in Dubai, it may not be a successful solution in Sweden, where we experience extreme weathers in terms of extreme winters. So solutions definitely differ in different geographies, and I see innovation and technology works hand in hand with these local conditions, and play a very important role when we define their work, their problem, and their solution accordingly. It could be different skill set level. Something which is a skilled labor in West may not be something which we can define as labor in the developing countries or upcoming geographies. So supply chain issues and are different. Material prices are different for different geographies. So different the geographies have different challenges. But in the same breath, I would say there are some unique challenges that all the geographies are seeing. Growing housing demands, all the geographies have to cater to that. It's no geography is left, and everyone needs more houses, needs more place for their people to stay. And all these wars have resulted into migration, and people are looking for suitable, safe house for themselves. So governments have to really work harder to achieve that. Material prices have increased, supply chain have become very complex. So these are the challenges that every geography is bearing, and the best solution is faster adoption of industrialized construction and giving it more serious thought as government.
In the different geos approach this in such a different way. I mean, I love how you've pointed out that the technology constraints or the technology literacy or labor shortages are common, even if they differ from region to region and how they play out. But your point about how the governments of the different geos, I think, is very astute too. Like I lived in Dubai for a couple of years as a younger man, and saw a lot of that firsthand as far as their governments embracing more progressive methodologies kind of as a showcase. Like we're letting you have this runway to do some stuff that other geos might not give the green light to, because they see the value in innovation, and the mindset is different for how they're embracing these building methodologies. I know Singapore is also very progressive in that nature. And there's a lot of parts of the world that are adopting things like ISO 19650 building standards, which makes it much easier to have an apples to apples conversation, even if you're stepping from geo to geo. I feel like our friends in North America might benefit from looking at some of these building standards a little bit closer. But I know that also working for a federal contractor years ago is a bit more complex from state to state and region than just saying we're all going to adopt the standard now. But it's just such a unique moment. And Ben, I know your breadth of perspective does extend more broadly. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that as far as how our different geos are embracing or hesitant to embrace this movement?
Yeah, it comes back to what is the motivation, I think, for the change. And you said it, I think, earlier, where we can look at the problems, and we can see them as problems, or we can look at them as opportunities. Those opportunities are really great. They build businesses. They're opportunities for us to look at problems or look at opportunities and come up with better solutions. Our investment in our energy and our time and our dollars and our money and our communities, is it focused on these problems? And I think that would be the more optimistic way to look at this is that how do we address these global problems as opportunities that really benefit everyone? And so there's the sameness in those, or the same in the problems, and then there's also the uniqueness of the opportunities. And even if we are able to generalize and say, this is now the way to do it globally, the way each geo is going to get there is going to be different. It's sort of like, if we were all going to go to an address, we're all in different locations. We may all head in different directions. I may head north, you may head south, right? But we're all going to that same destination. And I do see, maybe it's a little Pollyannic, but I do see us trying to converge to address these problems as an industry, and I get excited about that.
Yeah, you point out one of my favorite things about the construction industry, really, because it's an industry that touches every single person in the entire world in some way. Like, we build the facilities that allow people to work and live and play and keep people safe and do all these other things. It's very easy, if you're not in it in the way that we are, to not think about it so much. Where you go, okay, the construction industry, oftentimes somebody might think, okay, that's a nuisance. I'm dealing with building construction and gosh, that's loud and noisy, or I'm stuck in traffic because they're redoing a road. And I have empathy for that. That can be frustrating and, impacts the environment in some way. But what a cool industry where we get to really innovate and bring things like industrialized construction and modern technology all together to solve very human problems. I mean, it's just such a big thing that I always love to just point that out, because we're doing some cool stuff. We get to talk to really, really cool people doing just awesome work that impacts everybody. And I want to take a look at some future-focused technology here. And so, Tarika, I've got a question for you that kind of builds on that. I feel like I'd be a terrible podcast host if I don't mention AI, because that's the thing that everybody's talking about right now. And in some aspects, I think it's very real. In other aspects, I think there's some hype. But I'm curious, amidst all of this buzz in the construction industry specifically, and with a lot of organizations implementing AI some way into the way they work. I mean, Autodesk is introducing technology in this space as well. Is AI impacting industrialized construction for the clients that you're serving more broadly? And how might that evolve in the future if it's not having a big impact right now? Like, how does AI fit into the conversation for your teams?
Yeah, I mean, we can't have a discussion where AI is not involved. So thanks. Good you asked about it. AI is definitely there in industrialized construction and, giving good impact. Very basic things like, predictive analysis. We created, solutions around predictive analysis because a lot of data is getting generated, and we should analyze that data and bring better results. So, all these predictive analysis solutions help you do better in designs, in terms of efficiency, in terms of productivity, safety on site. So all these solutions around predictive analysis using AI. We also create a lot of safety workforce safety solutions that helped during COVID and post-COVID. I see a lot of architects and building designers using AI-based simulations to validate their designs. We are not sitting far away where LLM models will create, modular designs. Like we use LLM for creating images. So yeah, it's good adoption. Yeah, encouraging adoptions.
I love that, because there's so much happening right now with the technology, and we're really seeing it out on site, helping people make decisions and choices and analyzing things at a scale that folks just simply can't do as just a regular human. And I think that's an area that I always like to remind folks of. Like, we're not talking about robots that are coming to get your job. This is an augmentation to the work that you do that can do something at a scale or an accuracy that a person just, oftentimes simply can't achieve. I think there are some risks that come with that as well. So you got to make sure you're deploying AI technology very thoughtfully. I had an episode a while back with May Winfield, and we we talked about that, like large language models. If you're plugging data into it and it's just a generic chat GPT, that data is out there right now. And so you have to be very thoughtful about how you deploy some of the technologies. But Ben, I'm curious, just from your perspective, I know, as I mentioned before, Autodesk is, in this space as well. And so we're bringing some value to the market from the AI perspective. But, where are you seeing the tool fitting into industrialized construction today and then, 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, today I think that we already talked about some of the great opportunities. I think I get excited about the acceptance of artificial intelligence today, because what it's done actually is it did something similar to what Google did for search. I think before we had Google search, we thought that the internet needed to be broken into compartments, so categories, like the Yahoo style. I'm looking at sports, or I'm looking at news, and so I had to. The burden was, I want to go get information from the internet. I now have to understand the classification of the question I'm asking. And Google flipped that around and said, just ask the question. And now I'm able to search everything. And that you could say that worked. And now, but it had to change our behavior. Right? It changed the way we approach the problem. And so while AI has been around for a while, and there's the AI is a whole gauntlet, or a whole collection of ways of approaching problems that are these non-algorithmic solutions. And machine learning and large language models are pushing the boundaries for this and really bringing AI to everyone. It's making it common. It's changing the way we think about the way we engage with the computer itself and the machine itself. And that's where I think the exciting opportunity is. And that's what's going to start changing things. And as that happens, we're going to get more and more comfortable with it being an assistant, something that comes along with us and says, you're looking at, I have a capacity, right? I can only look at so many emails and Slack messages in a day, or notifications or warnings in a day before I'm at a capacity. But now the system can say, here's the ones you should be looking at. Here's the ones that are the most important and most relevant. And I can prioritize that. And it helps me manage many more elements of data. And as we move into more complicated and different forms of construction, this is going to be fundamental to helping understand where we need to spend our time as the humans on the important problems without having to scan through every single issue that's there. I think that's in the short term. We're going to see more and more of these assistants. In the longer term, I think the opportunity becomes very interesting and actually fundamental to the workforce itself. As we see people in the workforce retire, and we're losing a lot of the wisdom, essentially, and we're having fewer people enter into the trades, fewer and fewer people who understand this historical wisdom of how you do things. We need to capture that in a way, and we need to capture it in a way that is we can pull it back and retrieve it. And so that's where I see AI is becoming so critical to how we work. To be able to ask the question about how do you make this thing, and for it to go and say, well, other things are made this way. And all of a sudden now I can learn what I need to make better decisions as I move forward. Again, it's that it takes, there's sort of, I think we're going to, in a few years, we're going to be able to reflect back, and we're going to say there was the era where we went to school and we learned things. And then that was knowledge. And then, the internet made knowledge ubiquitous. And now all of a sudden, now knowledge, I can look it up, right? We can debate, who was that person who starred in that movie? Well, we don't have to wait very long before we can just look it up. And then now, that's all become ubiquitous. But how do I use that knowledge? How do I apply that into my space? That's a different problem. And if I can articulate what I need, all of a sudden now, without knowing the knowledge, without having the wisdom, I can get references to those other pieces and I can learn. So it's not that I'm not deferring the wisdom. I'm growing my ability to make better decisions by using the tools that understand the space really well. And that's what AI will do. It will be able to go into all of these spaces and be able to help me understand that. So I think I have a very optimistic view on how it's going to engage with the way we work.
I agree with you, though. I mean, it does come back to that augmentation conversation, especially as we iterate on these tools. But then I think you accidentally loop back to our beginning narrative on just risk management as well, because this helps folks prioritize where some of those fire drills might be, where they need to put their attention first, because without some ability to stack rank the urgency of the things coming into your inbox, and let's be real, any project manager who's listening to us right now probably has 500 to 2,000 unread emails right now. Some of those emails might not ever be read. And to be able to have a technology platform that isn't just your email inbox, that identifies at the beginning of each day, you go, this is where your risks are. This is where you need to pay attention. This is where your schedule is slipping right now. And oh, by the way, here's the common thing that's happened on your last 2 projects that caused that schedule to slip. Those are those data points where we get our superintendents and our project executives to get really excited, because they can click in really quickly and get those insights in a way that helps them make decisions, but also helps them know what decisions need to be made today, instead of finding out about that decision in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then suddenly you've got a much bigger problem than you would have had if you didn't install all of that piping when it shouldn't have gone in because there was an error that somebody hadn't seen before. So I think we've done a really great job of taking a look at just, the broader industrialized ecosystem at large. I feel there is so much progress that has been made and a lot of progress yet to be made on this topic. But I feel like I'm just really encouraged at the state of things and the enthusiasm for interconnecting all the tools and giving people the visibility. So I appreciate both of you helping me go on that journey today. I've got one more question for both of you that I love asking. And Tarika, I'm going to put you on the spot first here. What is one tool that you use on every project that you work on?
ChatGPT.
That's
It
fitting.
has answer to everything.
I love the AI tools in that realm because it just gives me places to start. Like I can prompt it for a whole bunch of different things. Hey, if I'm considering this topic, what are some points that are common that I might not think of, especially if I'm not an expert in there? I also use it very often to summarize notes or transcripts of conversations I've had that help me draw out some of those key points. And that saves me so much time. And I think that's the big win for me just at a base level with technology. So ChatGPT, I love it. Ben, how about you? What's one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
So I would say, well, on the successful projects, I think I bring patience and curiosity. I think a willingness to dive in and ask why, and to ask the why that and why that, and to truly understand what we're trying to do. I think there's at least maybe when I'm younger, there's a tendency to rush to a solution before truly understanding what the problem is. And again, we talked a lot today about opportunity and what that opportunity is. And I do love learning about these things and learning what we can do and what the best approach is. That patience to flush out the problem and to be curious and ask it enough questions to understand what the opportunity really is.
I love that answer as well. I was similar as a younger man, whereas eager to go, okay, this is what we're going to do, on to the next problem. But there's a lot of nuance that's important to consider, especially as the problems get more complex or you're working on, bigger teams with more perspectives. But also I think just that patience and listening is huge, because we need to get all those perspectives to fully inform, the choices that we make. And I can connect that to things like diversity and all kinds of other really important aspects of our industry that I think folks are talking about more and more. So the two great answers. I always love this part of the conversation because we get to kind of decouple from whatever theme we had and just talk about some really neat and human things. But I have to say again, both, thank you so much for joining me today to really lend your perspective and knowledge on industrialized construction. I consider myself a novice, and so it's a real privilege to hear and understand where the industry sits today. So thank you. And for everybody out there listening, of course, thanks for joining us on another episode of Digital Builder. Most of you have heard this at this point, but we are a video show as well. So make sure you head over to the Autodesk Construction Cloud YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any major podcast player. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, I'm going to plead, I'm going to beg, please take a moment and go over and rate us 5 stars if you think we deserve it. A little review always helps. It makes us bump up the charts and makes a big difference on the back end. And of course, If you have a question for me or would like to suggest a show topic or guest, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Eric Thomas at Autodesk, or Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days. I am builder_digital. And again, thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.